During the early years of World War II, the Imperial Japanese Navy believed its submarines could operate deep in the Pacific with near total freedom. Japanese commanders felt confident that their vessels could slip through the vast ocean unseen, strike U.S. shipping, and disappear again. But by 1944, things had changed dramatically. American anti-submarine technology had advanced to a point that shocked Japanese crews. One moment in particular left a deep mark on them. When Japanese submarine crews intercepted strange American sonar buoys, they realized the ocean was no longer theirs. In the beginning of the war, Japanese submarines roamed the Pacific with relative ease. They operated around the U.S. West Coast, near Australia, and throughout the vast expanse of the Pacific. Their commanders relied on stealth, careful navigation, and the huge distances of the ocean to stay hidden. U.S. anti-submarine warfare was still in its early stages. Sonar technology existed, but was limited. Patrols were scattered. Many American naval forces were focused on surface battles rather than hunting submarines. However, as the war went on, the U.S. began to adapt. Convoys improved their escort tactics. Radar and sonar technology advanced rapidly, and one of the biggest game changers was the development of new airborne anti-submarine tactics. Instead of relying solely on ships to hunt submarines, the U.S. Navy began using aircraft equipped with radar and sonar detection tools. These aircraft could patrol vast areas quickly, spot periscopes or wakes, and then use special sonar buoys to track submarines underwater. The sonar buoy, or sonobuoy, was a small floating device dropped from aircraft. Once in the water, it extended a hydrophone below the surface to listen for submarine noises. It transmitted the sounds back to the aircraft using radio signals. This allowed the aircraft to effectively plant ears in the ocean. Even if the submarine dove deep, the buoys could pick up propeller noise or hull sounds and help pinpoint its location. For Japanese submarine crews, this was an unfamiliar and terrifying new development. Their tactics relied on slipping beneath the surface and disappearing. Now they faced invisible listening devices dropped from the sky. Even when they thought they were safe underwater, they were being heard. Studio First, ENCOUNTRS. In 1944, Japanese submarines operating near the Marianas and Philippine waters began to report unusual signals. Crew members listening to their own hydrophones picked up strange pinging and clicking sounds they hadn't heard before. At first, many commanders thought it was some sort of malfunction or maybe enemy ships using active sonar in a new way. But as more reports came in, a clearer picture emerged. Aircraft were patrolling overhead, and after they passed, these mysterious buoys were left behind in the water. Some Japanese submarines managed to surface at night and recover a few of these devices. The crews examined the strange floating cylinders with antennas and wiring. Engineers on board were stunned. These were clearly sophisticated listening devices, unlike anything Japan was using at the time. The Americans had figured out a way to turn the ocean itself into a trap. Before the introduction of sonar buoys, Japanese submarines could usually escape detection by diving deep and changing course. Many Allied surface ships lacked the speed or precision to track them for long periods. Aircraft were dangerous if they caught a submarine on the surface, but once the submarine dove, the plane typically lost contact. The sonobuoy changed this completely. Now, aircraft could drop a string of buoys in a pattern, forming a listening net. Even if the submarine tried to sneak away, its propeller noise would be tracked by the buoy array, and the aircraft could vector in destroyers or drop depth charges with astonishing accuracy. Japanese crews quickly realized that their old evasion tactics were failing. Submarines that previously could have escaped were now being cornered by coordinated attacks between aircraft and ships. It felt as if the Americans could hear them everywhere. Captured sonobuoys were sent back to Japanese technical teams for analysis. Engineers were impressed and deeply concerned. The devices were simple enough to be mass-produced, but advanced in concept. Each one had a hydrophone, a transmitter, and a floating mechanism that kept it in place. The radio signals were tuned to frequencies used by American aircraft, allowing pilots to monitor multiple buoys simultaneously. It was a clever system that turned airplanes into mobile anti-submarine command centers. Japan had nothing comparable. Resource shortages and industrial strain meant they couldn't rapidly build similar detection systems. Their submarine force suddenly found itself at a technological disadvantage that they couldn't close quickly. For the men inside Japanese submarines, these developments were terrifying. Submarine warfare was already psychologically demanding. Crews spent long periods submerged in darkness, listening for any hint of danger. Now, with the presence of sonar buoys, they felt surrounded by invisible ears. The moment they heard the telltale pinging of a buoy, they knew aircraft were nearby and that depth charges could follow at any moment. Some crews reported feeling trapped. No matter how deep they dove, the sound of the buoys followed. Even if they escaped one attack, they often surfaced miles away only to find more buoys waiting. It created a sense of constant vulnerability. Veterans later recalled that this was the moment they realized the ocean was no longer their safe domain. The appearance of sonar buoys was part of a larger transformation in naval warfare. The United States was combining technology, industrial power, and new tactics to dominate not just the surface and air, but the underwater battle space as well. Japanese submarines, which had once enjoyed wide operational freedom, were now hunted relentlessly. By late 1944 and 1945, American anti-submarine warfare had become incredibly efficient. Aircraft patrols with radar would detect submarines on the surface. Once a submarine dived, aircraft dropped patterns of sonobuoys to maintain contact. Then either the aircraft itself would attack with depth charges or call in surface ships to finish the job. This layered defense system was devastating. The loss of underwater dominance was a serious blow to Japanese strategy. Their submarines had been intended to disrupt U.S. logistics and gather intelligence. As American forces advanced across the Pacific, these submarines could have posed a major threat to supply lines. Instead, many Japanese submarines were sunk before they could do serious damage. Others were forced to operate in less strategic areas to avoid detection, reducing their impact on the war. The psychological effect was just as damaging. Submarine crews went to sea knowing they were being watched and listened to in ways they couldn't fully counter. Morale suffered, missions became riskier, and many submarines never returned. One often cited incident involved a Japanese submarine operating near the Marianas in mid-1944. The crew intercepted several sonobuoy signals and attempted to evade, but as they turned to flee, more buoys appeared in their path. Aircraft overhead maintained constant contact, relaying the submarine's position. Destroyers closed in and launched a coordinated attack. The submarine was sunk after hours of relentless pursuit. Survivors later reported that the sound of the buoys made it clear they were being hunted in a way they had never experienced before. For the Japanese Navy, these encounters marked a turning point. They had once prided themselves on their ability to navigate and fight in the vast Pacific without being detected. But now, American technology had turned that vastness into a monitored battlefield. The ocean was no longer a place to hide. It was filled with listening devices and patrolling aircraft ready to strike. This realization spread quickly among submarine crews. They spoke about it in debriefings and shared warnings with other submarines. Some even changed patrol routes to avoid known buoy-heavy areas, but the reach of U.S. forces continued to grow. The story of Japanese submarine crews intercepting U.S. sonar buoys is more than a tale of technology. It represents a shift in control over the Pacific Ocean. Through innovation and mass production, the U.S. Navy gained dominance not just above and on the surface, but below it too. Japanese submarines, once hunters, became the hunted. By the end of the war, this technological edge helped the U.S. secure its supply lines, weaken Japanese naval power, and accelerate victory in the Pacific. For the Japanese crews who first encountered those strange floating devices, it was a chilling moment of realization. The ocean that once offered them freedom and stealth had been claimed by a new kind of warfare. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold tales of World War II. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Which other WWII naval technologies would you like us to cover next? Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring history.